If you're preparing to take the SAT, then you're in the right place. I'm going to walk you through some of the math problems that are on one of the official SAT practice tests. I will link the problem set in the description of the video so that if you want to try the practice problems first, you can do that. First things first, on the screen in front of you, you have the reference sheet for the SAT. I know a lot of kids just want to skip past this, but please just take a couple of minutes to engage with it and to familiarize yourself with what is on it. Because what you might find is that as you start to do the problems later, you'll find yourself thinking, I could figure this problem out if I only knew X. Well, maybe X was actually something that was in the reference sheet. So I encourage you to take a couple of minutes to just familiarize yourself with the reference sheet and then go ahead and dive into the test. So let's get to it. Number one, a group of students voted on 5 after-school activities. The bar graph shows the number of students who voted for each of the 5 activities. How many students chose activity 3? So looking at the graph, our activities are on the x-axis. We're going to find activity number 3 here, and we're looking to see how many students chose it. Well, the number of students that chose it is on the y-axis over here. So I'm looking to see how far up this bar graph for number 3 goes. So when I come to the end of the bar for number 3, I see that it's between 2 values. So I don't know exactly what it is, but I know it's a value between 35 and 40. And when I look at my answer choices, the only one that makes sense and fits into that description is B, 39. Not a bad start, right? Number 2, what percentage of 300 is 75? So there's a couple of different ways to do this problem. I personally like doing percent problems with equations, so I'll do it that way, and then I'll show you how to do a proportion as well. So it says, what percentage? When I don't know something in math, I call it a variable. Of in math indicates that we are multiplying. 300 is going to come down as 300 because it's just a number. Is in mathematics is an equal sign, and the number 75 is next. So all I did was I took that English and I translated it into math. Now that I have an equation, I just need to know how to solve a one-step equation here. So I'm trying to get x by itself, which means I'm going to divide by 300 on both sides. Because on the left, 300 divided by 300 is 1, and 1 times x is just x. On the right side, when I divide that, I'm going to get 0.25. I now need to make 0.25 into a percent, and you can do that by either moving the decimal 2 spaces to the right or multiplying by 100. Those both mean the same thing. So either way, I'm going to get a 25%. Fast forward if you want to skip the proportion explanation. Otherwise, I'll show you how to do that as well. To solve this using proportions, I have to remember that a percent is always out of 100. So I'm taking something out of 100. In this problem, it says what percentage, meaning I don't know how much out of 100. So again, I'm calling that x over 100. Now I'm going to set that equal to a second ratio. You may have heard your teacher tell you that this is going to be is over of, or they might have said part over whole. Both of these are correct. You're trying to set up x over 100 is equal to what part of what whole. So looking at the numbers that were given, it's asking us what percent of 300. So of 300 indicates that 300 is the whole. I'm taking some part of 300. So 300 is my whole, so it's going to go in the denominator. The part is 75. Saying 75 is some part of 300. What part is it? What percent is it? So now that I have my proportion, I can solve by cross multiplying. So 300 times x is 300x. 75 times 100 is 7500. Now I'm at the same point again where I have a one-step equation. It just looks a little different than my other one. I'm dividing by 300 on both sides. And this time I do get 25. And that's because in the proportion, the 25 does represent the percent because it's out of 100. So either way we do this, proportion or equation or another method, we're going to get 25%. Number 3 asks for the solution of the given equation. So you're always trying to isolate x, get it by itself. So right now the x squared term is being divided by 25. So what I'm going to start by doing is multiplying both sides by 25. On the left side, that'll cancel out and leave me with just x squared. On the right side, when I multiply, I'm going to get 900. Now I have what x squared is equal to. I want to know what x is equal to. So because x is being squared, the opposite would be to take the square root. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides, and that's going to give me that x is equal to 30. Answer choice B. Number 4, 3 more than 8 times the number x is equal to 83. So let's go ahead and annotate this. 3 more than something means that I'm adding 3 onto something. 8 times the number x can be represented by 8x. A variable and a number next to each other with nothing in between means multiplication. So 8 times a number x is the same thing as 8x is equal to 83. So I'm looking for an answer choice that shows that I'm multiplying x by 8, I'm adding 3 to that, and all of that is equaling 83. And I see that answer choice D looks exactly like my annotations. Number 5, Hannah deposited a fixed amount into her bank account each month. The function f of t equals 100 plus 25t gives the amount in dollars in Hannah's bank account. So f of t, it says it gives the amount in dollars. So f of t is the amount of money she has in her bank account after t monthly deposits. So this variable t here indicates the number of monthly deposits. Nothing is more important than understanding what the variables represent in these equations. So t represents the number of monthly deposits, and they want to know what is the best interpretation of 25 in this context. When I look at the equation, the 25 is being multiplied by the t. So again, knowing what t represents is the key to my answer. If t represents the number of monthly deposits and 25 is being multiplied by the number of monthly deposits, that means that for each monthly deposit, her bank account is gaining $25. So obviously she must be depositing $25 each month. So let's look at the answer choice that states that. A, with each monthly deposit, the amount in Hannah's bank account increased by $25. There it is. A is the correct answer. But let's go through B, C, and D anyway just to prove them wrong and get a little more practice with what numbers mean in context of given equations. So B says before Hannah made any monthly deposits, meaning that T would be 0 before she made any deposits. So if T is the number of deposits, we're talking about when T is 0. The amount in her bank account was $25. So let's see if that's true. They're saying, let's plug this in, 100 plus 25 times 0. They're saying that when the value of T is 0, she's made no deposits, she would have $25 in her bank account. Well, if I multiply 25 times 0, I get 0, and then I add that to 100, I get 100. So f of 0 is 100, meaning that at 0 monthly deposits, there's already $100 in that bank account. How? The bank gave her a bonus, her mom opened the account for her and put $100, whatever it was, there was already $100 in there. So there was not $25 in there, so answer choice B is incorrect. Answer choice C says after 1 monthly deposit. So now again, T stands for monthly deposits. They're saying after 1 monthly deposit, so that's saying what happens when T is 1. The amount in Hannah's bank account was $25. Well, let's see what happens. If I take f of 1 and I substitute in 1 for T. So my T is now 1. They're saying I made 1 monthly deposit. What happens now? 25 times 1 is 25 plus 100 is 125. So after 1 monthly deposit, she had $125, not 25. So C is also wrong. Hopefully the situation is unraveling itself a little. You're understanding why she has $125 in there. She had that initial 100 for whatever reason, and then every month she's depositing 25. So after that first deposit, she has the 100 plus the 25 she put in there. And then D, Hannah made a total of 25 monthly deposits. This is the most wrong answer up here because if I knew how many monthly deposits she made, then T wouldn't be a variable, right? T is the number of monthly deposits, meaning that I don't know how many she made. I'm leaving this equation open to find out how much money she made based on how many monthly deposits she makes. Number 6, a customer spent $27 to purchase oranges at $3 per pound. How many pounds of oranges did the customer purchase? This is simply a division problem. They purchased 9 pounds. I'm dividing the amount of money they spent by the amount of money that it costs per pound, and that'll tell me how many pounds this person bought, which was 9 pounds. If you need to see this written out as a proportion, if the customer is spending $3 for every 1 pound, and I want to write this as a proportion, then I want to know how many pounds will $27 get me? And so now, however you solve proportions, you can either say, okay, this is times 9, so this must also be times 9, so 1 times 9 is 9, or you can cross multiply, so I get 3x equals 27, and then when I divide by 3 on both sides, I also get 9. So either way you slice it, it's going to be 9 pounds of oranges. Number 7, Nasir bought 9 storage bins that were each the same price. He used the coupon for $63 off the entire purchase. So $63 off means that eventually I'm going to subtract 63. The cost for the entire purchase after using the coupon was $27. What was the original price in dollars for one storage bin? What was the original price for one storage bin? I'm going to call this X. Let X be the price for one bin. Okay, now I'm going to build my equation from that variable. If X represents how much one bin costs, and I see that I have 9 bins that I bought, then I can say that 9X would represent the price for 9 bins. Okay, each bin costs X, 9X is the price of 9 bins. But then I had this coupon. So however much the price was for 9 bins, I'm going to subtract 63 from that because I had this coupon that took $63 off. And after I did that, I was left paying $27. So now that I built my equation, I can solve it and find out what X is. So I'm going to solve this equation by adding 63 to both sides. So we're going to go plus 63 plus 63. That's going to give me 9X equals 90. Then I'm going to divide by 9 on both sides. And that's going to give me X equals 10. And because X represented the price for one bin, that means that I found my answer. So it was $10 for one bin. Number 8, for the linear function f, the table shows 3 values of x and their corresponding values of f of x. Which equation defines f of x? Because we're dealing with a linear function, we know that the equation is going to be in the format y equals mx plus b, or f of x equals mx plus b. So the 2 values that you need to find in order to complete this equation are going to be the m and the b. The m being our slope and the b being the y-intercept. We have a formula we can use to find slope, and we'll do that in a second. But the b, normally we would find it after we find the slope. However, for this particular problem, the table gives us something really nice. It gives us this order pair 0, 29. The b, the y-intercept, is the point where the line crosses the y-axis. At that point, the x is always 0. So by giving us the order pair 0, 29, they already gave us the y-intercept. We know that 29 is going to be our b. That line is going to cross the y-axis at 0, 29. So when I look at my answer choices, that means that answer choice B is out and answer choice D is out, because we're looking for the answer choice where 29 is our b value. So now we have to find the m. So we need our slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So to find the slope, you need 2 points. We're given 3. Pick 2. It doesn't matter which 2. So I'm going to go ahead and pick these bottom 2 points, and I'm going to call my 1 my x1. And if I call that my x1, then my 32 needs to be called my y1. So every order pair has an x and a y. Keep your 1s together and keep your 2s together. So my x2 is going to be 2, and my y2 is going to be 35. So now I'm just substituting in 35 minus 32, right? So I just took my y2, 35, minus my y1, which was 32. Substituting in with the x values is going to give me 2 minus 1. And when I simplify this fraction, it's going to give me 3 over 1. So my slope, or my m value for the equation, is 3. So that tells me that answer choice A is the correct one here. Number 9 gives me 2 similar right triangles, and it tells us that P corresponds to S. If the measure of angle Q, so up here, is 18 degrees, what is the measure of angle S? So this is the angle that they're asking us to find. They've given us angle Q, and there's 2 important facts about triangles that we need to know right now. One of them is that corresponding angles in similar triangles are equivalent. They are the same measure. So if they already told me that P corresponds to S, then that must mean that Q corresponds to T. And I just told you that corresponding angles are equal. So if we know that angle Q is 18 degrees, then we also know that angle T is 18 degrees. Don't think of the triangle as being smaller and therefore having smaller angles. The angle measures are not affected by the length of the segments, right? So if I know angle T looks smaller, right? But I can just extend that for as long as I want. It doesn't change what the angle measure was, right? So I can change these side lengths, this is a horrific triangle I'm drawing, but you get the picture. I can make those segments as long or as short as I want, but this angle measure in here stays the same, all right? So corresponding angles of similar triangles are equal. So that tells me that T is 18 degrees. Now, the other important thing is that this box right here in the corner indicates a 90-degree angle, okay? And the third fact that I need to know about triangles is what the sum is of all their interior angles, because every triangle, no matter what it looks like, the three angles inside add up to the same amount. And if you don't know what that amount is, it's a perfect time for me to remind you how important your reference sheet is, because at the very end of the reference sheet, it tells us that the sum of the angles that are inside of a triangle is 180 degrees, no matter what that triangle looks like. So if I know that I have this 90-degree angle, and I also have this 18-degree angle, and I don't know what angle S is, but I do know that all together, these three are supposed to equal 180 degrees. Well, now I have an equation that I can solve. So now I can just add up the angles I did know. So this will give me 108 plus angle S, don't confuse that with a 5, please, equals 180. I'm just solving a one-step equation. I'm going to subtract 108 on both sides, and that's going to give me S equals 72. So 72 degrees is the measure of our missing angle S. Number 10, the scatter plot shows the relationship between two variables x and y. Which of the following equations is the most appropriate linear model for the data shown? If I try to draw a line of best fit without technology, it's going to look something along the lines of this, right? Trying to create a linear model for the scatter plot. When I look at the line that I drew that models those dots pretty well, the data pretty well, the first thing I notice is that it's a decreasing line. From left to right, we always read from left to right, that line is going downwards. Because it's going downwards, that means that it has a negative slope. So now when I look at my answer choices, I'm going to eliminate anything with a positive slope. Remember that the slope is the number that's being multiplied by x. Y equals mx plus b, m is the slope. These are all written in b plus mx, and that's okay. You're still looking for the number being multiplied by x. So I'm eliminating a, because in a, 9.4 is the slope. I'm eliminating c, because in c, 0.9 is the slope, and those are both positive numbers. Not possible, because if it had a positive slope, the line would be going upward like that, all right? So now the second feature of a linear equation is the y-intercept. So now I'm looking to see where would this line touch the y-axis. Again, mine is an estimate, right? So this is not going to be exact by any means, but if I look at my two answer choices, only one of them makes sense. This line is clearly going to hit the y-axis somewhere around 9. In answer choice B, it's saying that it'll hit it around 0.9, and in answer choice D, it's saying it'll hit it around 9.4. Well, 0.9 is a number that's between 0 and 1, so that would mean that it's hitting it all the way down here somewhere, which is not possible. So answer choice D is the linear equation that makes sense for this scatter plot.